Good morning. My name is Paola Rivieccio. I work at the University of Sorbonne Nouvelle in Paris, and the title of my presentation is The Autobiographies of Intercultural Encounter, a negotiated account of international exchanges. This study is a part of my PhD thesis completed in 2014. The objective of the presentation is to analyze the document Autobiographies of Intercultural Encounter. The document belongs to a particular discourse gender, the autobiographical gender, which today is more and more used as a means of investigation in language and culture education. It will be analyzed in strict connection with the context where it was used, that is, an international school exchange. International school exchanges are now an integral part of language education. Let's now have a look at the structure. First of all, I'm going to give some details about the autobiographies, which is the object of my analysis, and about the context in which it was used. Then I will clarify the study method and the theoretical framework which the study presupposes. So, I will be able to express my research question, which I'll try to answer through the analysis of a corpus of autobiographies written by a group of 100 children aged 10. The analysis is going to focus on four main aspects: the idea of encounter, the tension between individual and group identities, the idea of communication, and the way to elicit the expression of feelings. This document is a European instrument whose aim is to encourage adults and children to record and reflect on their intercultural experiences and encounters. In the USA, it is known as Lingua Folio, and the part in which we are interested is the part called The Importance of Interculturality. The document is made up of 8 questions, and it is introduced by a space where the writers are invited to insert their name and the designation of the person met. Now, let's have a look to the questions. What can you remember about the place where you met this person and what happened when you met? Write down everything you can remember about the person you met, what they looked like and what they were wearing. Was it easy for you and the other person to understand each other? How did you communicate with each other? How did you feel about meeting this other person? How do you think the other person felt about meeting with you? Do you think there is anything you and the other person could learn from each other? What do you think you learned or discovered from the meeting? If you met the person again, is there anything more you would like to ask them or anything else you would tell them about yourself? The context where the autobiographies were used was an international school exchange, Comenius Erasmus program, which took place from 2010 to 2012. The exchange involved 10-year-old children attending primary school in Italy, France, Great Britain. It includes 2 encounters, one in Italy, the other one in France. Children were asked to write the document as a school task to be completed after each encounter. So we have at our disposal almost 200 autobiographies to be analyzed. We used the version designed for younger learners and adapted for a written usage. They were written in the children's school tongue. Our study draws mainly on the following authors: Molinier, Darwin, who have worked on academic international school exchanges, They both resorted to the autobiographical account in order to encourage reflection and collect data. Moeller and Houghton investigated the American version of autobiography, Linguafolio, but with a particular attention to the role of the latter in encouraging learner autonomy in foreign language education. Patricia Cottelat studied the Council of Europe discourse involved in autobiographies, and she highlighted the lack of depth in treating the question of intercultural shock and feelings. I've also drawn on Crystal Cavalla's concept of emotional environment as an interesting starting point for deep feeling analysis of autobiographies discourse. Finally, I've drawn on Veronique Castellotti's last study about the way the idea of communication is conceived in foreign language education. Our starting position is that the autobiography are the result of a negotiation among different instances and needs. From one side, we have the Council of Europe instances. From the other, we have government and school institutions' way of designing intercultural education. And finally, we find the children's point of view and their reaction to the different instances. So my research question is, what kind of discourse emerges and is encouraged in autobiographies? What is the student's position toward this discourse? From a first reading of autobiographies, two main things seem to emerge. First of all, why the document focuses on the notion of encounter and not, for example, on that of experience or intercultural experience. The second thing is why children are encouraged to describe the encounter with a single child and not, for example, with other children. The representation of an intercultural exchange may reveal different ideas. In Europe, for example, it has been often imagined in the form of a school trip, and even when some exchange with other classes abroad has been put in place, the subjacent idea has been tourist travel. So we may suggest the possibility that the term encounter is favored in order to give a particular framework to the intercultural exchange, which shouldn't limit itself to the idea of tourism and consumption, but should favor the idea of change, of commitment, and of responsible participation. In particular, the aim of student trips should be to encourage students to meet, interact, and reflect on their encounter in the framework of shared activities. But at what extent is this idea of the intercultural experience shared by learners? Some interviews made before writing the autobiographies show that children don't understand the reasons why they have to meet other children in the frame of this exchange. Look at the example below. But after all, I haven't understood. We needed to meet French children in order to communicate. Why? I haven't understood yet. We may think that the child here could have felt obliged to meet children from a different nation, and the autobiographies may reinforce this feeling, above all when they are proposed as a school task. Some declarations made in the autobiographies let us think that meeting another child of a different nation is conceived as the real aim of the international exchange, and the contrary is felt as a sort of failure. Let's observe the extract below. Mary: I was happy because I met some English and Sardinian people. Michael: I was happy because it was the aim of the exchange. Felix: I was proud of myself to meet Sardinian friends. Brown: I'd like meeting a child in particular. Min. I felt that as I'm shy, I didn't dare to meet anyone. Min. I'd like to meet them again, because I've not an Italian or French friend yet. We may say that the usage of autobiographies in the frame of a school exchange may support this kind of moral obligation to meet someone which, it seems, characterizes modern student trips. Meeting a child of another country becomes a sort of mark of identity of the European student, as well as the opposite situation may be felt as a failure. Let's now try to understand the reason why in autobiographies the encounter is proposed mostly as an encounter between two children and not, for example, between a group of children, which is really the case in school exchanges. In fact, the nominal group, this person, appears 5 times out of 8, and the children are encouraged to give their given name and designate the other person. How can we explain this? According to Perford's survey, asking and giving the name is a way to take the other out of anonymity. Moreover, according to Molino, the given name refers to the individuality and singularity of a human being, while a common name refers rather to a group or a class. So we can suggest that autobiographies tries to avoid the student's inclination to designate the other by an adjective, as Frank Darwin points out, which adjective might refer, for example, to a national group, the Italians, the French. We can suggest the possibility that autobiographies aim to dissuade children to produce this kind of discourses and to help them to feel the encounter in a subjective way and to position themselves as individuals and not as representative of a particular social group, in this case a national group. Nevertheless, children frequently refer to national groups and express themselves in a generalized and stereotyped way, as we can see in the example below. I discovered that the French are nice, at least those I met, and not too loyal. Encounter with Maria Francesca, Italian girl. I discovered Sardinia and its inhabitants. Let's now examine question 3. Was it easy for you and the other person to understand each other? How did you communicate with each other? According to a recent study by Veronique Castellotti, a now question would elicit an answer about a result, while a why question could elicit an answer about motivation. In this article, the author underlines that normally the paradigm of language and cultural education focuses on the how and not on the why. Maybe it is for this reason that pupils' answers convey an idea of communication which coincides with the speech production, which is the most visible expression of communication. This idea could be the expression, too, of communicative method, which is inclined to see the production of speech as the main aim of language learning. Let's look at the example below. How did you communicate with each other? Emily. In fact, we didn't speak to each other, and so we didn't communicate at all. And what can you remember about the place where you met this person and what happened when you met? We met in the classroom and we walked together. We carried the flags of different nations, but I didn't talk, but I exchanged football stickers with some children. The child exchanges football or stickers in order to create a contact. Exchanging sticks is one of the different children's way to interact with other children of the same age. Beginning by sharing stickers could be a way to communicate his own passion and to express one of his social identities, for example that of a supporter of a particular team. Anyway, the child by his bat wants to underline that he didn't talk, as if it was a not completed task. In fact, the child didn't speak, but even without speaking, he communicated something very important about him to the other child. Let's now focus on the third point, the way to elicit pupils' expression of feelings concerning their encounter. How did you feel about meeting this other person at the time? How do you think the other person felt about meeting with you? Patricia Kotlat went deeper on this question, and she pointed to two critical factors: asymmetry in conceiving feelings and the euphemization of intercultural shock. It is difficult indeed to elicit from these answers some negative feelings or attitudes. Just sometimes children declare to have been nervous or angry. In fact, some research focuses on this aspect and reveals that asking to talk about feeling in a direct manner doesn't give good results for different reasons. Not all people like to talk about feelings in a direct and explicit way, but we can express feelings also without naming them, for example, just by describing the emotional context of an event, as Crystal Cavalla shows. So, how to give an answer to our initial question? First of all, it seems that in autobiographies, encounter is conceived as a here and now moment which finds its best expression in speech production. In fact, it seems that not much space is left to individual motivation for the encounter. Pupils' history is almost discouraged by stressing the individual dimension of the encounter and underplaying their social national group belonging. The Council of Europe tries to give a frame to intercultural exchanges. The frame is given by the notion of encounter, which could imply a psychological contact between people and a feeling of commitment. This frame creates an environment which encourages political correct answers where good feelings appear to be valued more than the intercultural shock. We feel that the encounter is seen more as a final and visible result and not as a long process which implies an invisible and imaginative dimension. So, what to do? I have just some proposals inspired by my experience. I would propose more why questions. Then I would encourage group collaborative writing of autobiography, which could help children to include in their representation of exchange a group dimension. And I would give more importance to more open questions, such as the first question of the autobiography, and I would add other questions such as what is your best or worst souvenir of your exchange? And other proposals are welcome. Thank you for your attention. Et merci de m'avoir écouté.